Watch enough people handle money for 30 years and you start to notice the same mistake on repeat. People rarely lose their future in one bad month. They waste it one quiet evening at a time. Most people think the gap between rich and broke comes down to income or luck or some natural talent for numbers. They are wrong. The real game is not what you earn between 9 and 5. The real game is what you do between 6 and 10 at night. By the end of this, you will know one specific change you can make tonight, not next year, that decides which side of that gap you end up on. Janet and Mike worked the same job in the same city for 14 years. Same starting salary, same yearly bonus, same company match on their retirement plan. By the time they both turned 45, Janet had built close to $190,000 in savings and investments. Mike had $11,000 and a credit card balance that never seemed to shrink. The difference was not their paycheck. The difference was what each of them did with the 3 hours between dinner and bed, 5 nights a week, for over a decade. Picture what those evenings actually looked like, because the gap did not come from one dramatic choice. Janet got home, ate dinner, and spent maybe 15 minutes glancing at her accounts before doing whatever she wanted with the rest of her night. Mike got home, ate dinner in front of the television, and let 3 hours disappear into shows and scrolling without ever once thinking about money until a bill was already late. Neither of them felt like they were making a financial decision. That is exactly the trap. The biggest financial decisions of your life rarely feel like financial decisions while you are making them. Run the math on that gap and it stops looking like luck. 3 hours a night, 5 nights a week, comes out to roughly 780 hours a year. Over 14 years, that is close to 11,000 hours. Janet spent hers building something. Mike spent his escaping something. 11,000 hours is not a rounding error. It is closer to a second full-time job, except one person clocked in and the other one clocked out. Your evenings are the real balance sheet of your life. Nobody hands you a bill for a wasted evening. There is no receipt, no bank alert. That is exactly why it is so dangerous. A bad investment shows up on a statement within a month. A wasted evening shows up 20 years later when you are 55 years old doing math on a napkin and realizing you cannot retire on schedule. The cost is real. It is just invisible until it is too late to fix cheaply. Notice something else about Janet and Mike. Mike was not lazy. He worked just as hard at his job as she did, sometimes harder, and he genuinely cared about his family. He simply never built a single structure around his evenings, so his evenings defaulted to whatever required the least effort in that exact moment. Default is the word that matters here. Humans do not drift toward wealth by accident. They drift toward whatever takes the least energy right now, and building money almost always takes more energy right now than it returns right now. That mismatch is the entire reason this problem exists. Notice that this pattern shows up at every income level, not just the lower end. A surgeon I once heard about earned close to $400,000 a year and still carried debt into his 50s, while a school custodian earning a fraction of that retired comfortably at 62 with a paid-off house. Nobody would guess that outcome by looking at their paychecks. You would guess it correctly by looking at their evenings instead. The surgeon's nights were full of takeout, late-night online shopping, and a steady stream of upgrades he never quite needed. The custodian's nights were full of the same boring 10 minutes, repeated for 30 straight years. Income explains almost none of the gap between those two men. evenings explain almost all of it. Plenty of people try to solve this the wrong way, by chasing a second income instead of fixing the first one's evenings. A woman named Brianna picked up a weekend side job for nearly 2 years, working an extra 15 hours a week on top of her regular job, convinced that more money coming in would finally fix her savings. It brought in roughly $9,000 extra over those 2 years. Almost none of it survived past the following month because her weeknight evenings never changed, and the new income simply flowed through the exact same gaps her old income had always flowed through. More water poured into a bucket with a hole in the bottom still drains out the bottom. Fix the hole first. The extra income, if you still want it after that, will finally have somewhere to land. This is the lesson sitting at the center of Charlie Munger's lifelong study of human behavior and money, and it is why this channel exists. Munger spent decades pointing out that most financial disaster has almost nothing to do with markets and almost everything to do with daily habits nobody thinks to examine. He was famous for being relentlessly boring with his time, not exciting, not flashy, just boring on purpose night after night for 60 years straight. Boring is what built the fortune. Exciting is what destroys it. A man I once studied, I will call him Robert, ran his own small electrical contracting business for almost 20 years and stayed broke the entire time despite making good money. Business was never the problem. His evenings were. After a long day of physical work, Robert came home and numbed out every single night for 2 decades while telling himself things would get easier once the business grew. The business grew. Nothing else changed. Then, at 41, something shifted. Robert did not get a raise. He did not win the lottery. He rebuilt 3 habits around his evenings, and within 6 years, he had paid off his house and built a retirement account most people his age would envy. Stick with this, and you are about to learn the exact 3 pillars Robert used, in the order he used them, with the specific numbers behind each one. That order is not random, and it is worth understanding before you start. Attention has to come first, because automating money you are not paying attention to just means you will not notice when life changes and the automation stops fitting your situation. Automation has to come second, because attention alone, without a system to back it up, runs on willpower, and willpower is the least reliable resource you own. Reflection has to come last, because you cannot learn anything useful about a habit you have not yet started living inside. Skip the order and the whole thing wobbles. Follow it and each piece holds the next one up. Pillar 1 is controlling the first hour after work. Pillar 2 is automating money before you ever feel it land in your account. Pillar 3 is asking one single question every night before you go to sleep. 3 pillars, nothing complicated, nothing that requires a finance degree. Just 3 boring decisions, repeated until they become automatic. Start with the first hour after work, because this is where almost everyone bleeds their future without noticing. The hour right after you get home is the single highest leverage hour of your entire day, and most people hand it over for free. Your willpower is not flat throughout the day. It is highest in the morning, drains steadily as decisions pile up, and by the time you walk through your front door at 6, you are running on fumes. Whatever you do in that first hour is almost never a decision. It is a default. And defaults are where money quietly disappears. Explain it plainly, and it sounds almost too simple to matter. The first 60 minutes after work sets the tone for every hour that follows it. Walk in and collapse onto the couch with a phone in your hand, and you have just told your brain that tonight is a night of drifting. Walk in and spend 10 minutes opening mail, checking account balances, or planning tomorrow's meals, and you have told your brain that tonight is a night of running your own life. The difference between those two nights, repeated 5 times a week for a year, is roughly 250 hours. 250 hours either spent drifting or spent building. Notice that this is not a productivity tip about squeezing more tasks into your evening. It is closer to a tone-setting ritual, the financial version of brushing your teeth before bed. You are not trying to solve every money problem in 10 minutes. You are training your brain to treat the evening as a continuation of your responsibilities instead of an escape hatch from them. Once that switch flips, everything that follows in your night, even the relaxing parts, sits on a foundation instead of a void. Make this easier on yourself by changing your environment instead of relying on raw willpower to fight it. Charge your phone in the kitchen overnight instead of on your nightstand, so picking it up the second you walk in requires an extra trip you probably will not bother making. Put your banking app on the very first screen of your phone, not buried 3 folders deep, so checking one number takes 5 seconds instead of feeling like a chore. None of this requires more discipline. It requires making the right choice slightly easier and the wrong choice slightly harder, which is almost always enough to tip the scale. 3 objections always come up the moment someone hears this. The first is, I'm too tired after work to do anything productive. Fair point, except controlling the first hour is not about doing more work. It is about doing 10 focused minutes instead of 0 focused minutes, then resting with a clear conscience instead of a guilty one. The second objection is, I don't have an extra hour, my evening is already full. Also fair, except this is not asking you to add an hour, it is asking you to redirect the first one you already have, away from autopilot and toward attention. The third objection is, my kids need me the second I walk in the door. That one is real, and the fix is not to ignore your family. The fix is to do this 10-minute reset before you walk in the door at all. Sit in your car for 10 minutes. Do it on your lunch break. Do it the moment the kids go to bed. The timing can move. The habit cannot disappear. Here is the arithmetic that makes this concrete. A woman named Carla spent her first home hour checking her bank app, paying one bill, and writing tomorrow's top 3 tasks on a sticky note every weeknight for 6 years. That is roughly 10 minutes a night, 50 minutes a week, a little over 40 hours a year. 40 hours a year of focused attention on her own life. A man named Devon, same income, same starting point, spent that same first hour scrolling and snacking every weeknight for 6 years, and never once looked at his account balance until the 15th of the month when a bill bounced. Carla ended those 6 years with no missed payments, no late fees, and a savings account that had quietly grown past $15,000. Devon ended those 6 years almost $4,000 deep in overdraft fees and credit card interest alone. 40 hours, a year of attention was the entire gap. That number matters because it shows the trade is not even close. 40 hours sounds small until you realize it bought Carla $19,000 of breathing room compared to Devon, just from where her attention landed for 10 minutes a night. Multiply that gap by a working life of 40 years instead of 6, and you stop talking about thousands of dollars. You start talking about the difference between retiring on your own terms and working past 70 because you have no other choice. So step 1 in your life this week is simple. Pick the exact 10 minutes, same time every weeknight, and use them to check one number, pay one thing, and write down tomorrow's one priority. Not an hour, 10 minutes. Do that for 7 days before you decide whether it works. Move to the second pillar now, because controlling your attention only gets you halfway. Pillar 2 is putting your savings on autopilot, so the decision to build wealth gets made once, not every single payday. People love to imagine themselves as disciplined. Discipline is real, but it is also exhausting, and exhausted people make worse decisions at the exact moment money lands in their account. The fix is not more discipline. The fix is removing the decision entirely. Explain why this number specifically matters, and it comes down to timing, not willpower. Money that sits in your checking account for even 3 days before you decide what to do with it has already started losing the fight. Bills feel urgent. Savings feel optional. Every single time those two compete inside the same account, urgent wins and optional loses. Automating savings to move out within hours of payday before it ever becomes available money in your head takes that fight away completely. Think about how a gym membership works, and the same logic applies here without much translation. People who pay for a gym membership monthly, whether or not they go, show up more often than people who pay per visit, because the cost has already left their hands and skipping no longer saves them anything in the moment. Automated savings work on the exact same wiring. Once the money has already moved, your brain stops fighting to keep it, because the fight is already over before you noticed it started. A woman named Felicia learned this the hard way before she learned it the easy way. For years, she automated her savings into an account at the same bank as her checking, visible on the same screen every time she logged in. She transferred it back out almost every month, telling herself it was just a temporary loan to herself. The moment she moved that same automated transfer to a completely different bank, one she had to log into separately with its own password, the withdrawals stopped almost overnight. Nothing about the math changed. The only thing that changed was how visible and how easy that money was to touch. 3 objections show up here every time. First, I don't have enough left over to automate anything. That is backwards. Automating a small amount, even $30 a paycheck, is how you find out what you can actually live on, because you stop seeing that money as available in the first place. Second, automating feels like giving up control. It is the opposite. You are setting the rule once, while you are thinking clearly, instead of redeciding it every 2 weeks while you are tired and 100 ads are telling you to spend. Third, I'll just transfer the money back out the next day. That happens, and the fix is not more guilt. The fix is putting that automated transfer into a separate bank, one way, without a debit card attached, so moving it back requires real effort instead of one tap. Raise that number slowly as your situation allows, but only ever raise it the same way you started it, automatically. The first time you get a raise, increase the automated transfer before the extra money ever shows up in a normal paycheck, so your spending never adjusts upward to meet it in the first place. People who wait to decide how much of a raise to save almost always end up saving none of it, because a raise that has already touched your checking account for even 1 month starts feeling like it was always yours to spend. Here is the second arithmetic example. 2 co-workers, same job, same $52,000 salary. One of them, a man named Theo, automated 4% of every paycheck into a separate account the day it landed and never touched it for 8 years. The other, a woman named Priya, told herself she would save whatever's left over at the end of each month for those same 8 years. Theo's 4%, growing at a modest average return, turned into just over $19,000 by year 8, without him ever once making an active decision to save. Priya, doing the math on leftover money every month, actually saved more some months and zero in most others, and ended up with under $3,000 total, despite earning the exact same income the entire time. The only difference was who made the decision once, and who remade it 24 times a year and lost most of those rounds. $19,000 versus $3,000, same income, same 8 years. That gap is not about who earned more. It is about who removed the decision from a tired brain at the worst possible moment, and who left that decision sitting on the table every single payday, waiting to be lost again. So step 2 in your life this week is this. Open your banking app today, set up one automatic transfer for the day after payday, even if it is only $20 or $30, and send it to an account you cannot easily reach. Do it once. Let the system carry the weight from here. Now the third pillar, and this one is the quietest of the three, but it is what makes the first two last. Pillar 3 is asking yourself one single question every night before bed. What did I learn today about my money or my time that I can use tomorrow? Not a budget review, not a spreadsheet. One sentence, said out loud or written down every single night. Explain why this specific habit earns a place next to attention and automation, and it comes down to memory. Humans are remarkably bad at learning from financial mistakes in real time. You overspend on a Tuesday, and by Thursday the lesson has already faded, buried under everything else that happened that week. A nightly question forces the lesson to surface while it is still fresh enough to matter, and repeated nightly, it builds something most people never develop. An actual relationship with their own decisions, instead of a vague feeling of guilt that never turns into anything useful. 3 objections come up immediately. First, I don't have anything new to learn most days. You do. Even a boring day taught you something, whether it was that you spent too much on lunch out of boredom or that skipping your evening reset made the whole night feel chaotic. The question is not asking for a breakthrough. It is asking for one honest sentence. Second, this feels like therapy, not finance. In a sense it is, because money problems are rarely math problems. They are usually attention problems wearing a money costume, and this question is how you catch them early, before they turn into a pattern that takes years to undo. Third, I'll forget to do it. Attach it to something you already do every night without fail, brushing your teeth or plugging in your phone, and let that existing habit remind you. The question also catches patterns that have nothing to do with spending and everything to do with time, which matters just as much. A man might notice, across 2 weeks of nightly sentences, that every night he skips his 10-minute reset follows a night he stayed up late watching something he barely remembers the next morning. That pattern alone is worth more than most budgeting advice, because it points to the actual cause sitting upstream of the money problem, instead of just the money problem itself. Most financial mistakes are downstream of a time mistake made a day or two earlier, and the nightly question is often the only tool that catches that connection at all. A retired schoolteacher named Walter started this exact nightly question at 58, 15 years later than he wished he had. In year 1 alone, his nightly notes revealed that nearly every overspending night followed a stressful day at work, almost never a happy one. He had never noticed that pattern in 30 years of marriage and 30 years of paychecks, because nobody had ever asked him tea. Oh, write a single sentence about it before bed. Once he saw that pattern written down across 30 separate nights, he built a single rule: stressful day, no online shopping until morning. That one rule, found entirely through his nightly question, cut his impulse spending by what he later estimated was close to $1,200 over the following year. He did not need a budgeting app to find that pattern. He needed 30 nights of one honest sentence. So step 3 in your life this week is this. Tonight, before you turn off the light, say one sentence out loud about what today taught you about your money or your time. Tomorrow night, do it again. By the end of the week, you will already see a pattern you did not know was there. Here is where almost every plan like this falls apart, and it has nothing to do with the 3 steps themselves. It happens around day 10 to day 14, almost exactly. The first week feels almost exciting because new habits release a small hit of motivation just from being new. Then the second week arrives, the novelty wears off, and one ordinary Tuesday you walk in exhausted. The kids are loud, something at work went badly, and the 10-minute reset feels like one demand too many. That is the moment that decides everything. Not the first day, that exact tired Tuesday in week 2. Willpower breaks quietly. There is no dramatic collapse. You just skip the 10 minutes once, tell yourself you will catch up tomorrow, and tomorrow you skip it again because skipping already worked yesterday and nothing bad happened. 3 weeks later, the habit is gone, and you cannot point to the exact day it died, because it died from 1,000 tiny permissions, not one big decision. Picture the exact feeling, because naming it helps you catch it next time. It is a kind of warm, reasonable-sounding exhaustion that whispers, just this once, you have earned a break. You can pick this back up tomorrow with a clear head. That voice is rarely lying about how tired you are. It is lying about how easy tomorrow will be to restart, because tomorrow brings its own tired Tuesday with the exact same whisper waiting. The fix is not more motivation. Motivation is exactly what failed you on that Tuesday, so adding more of it solves nothing. The fix is structure that does not require motivation to survive. Put the sticky note on the bathroom mirror, not in your phone where it competes with everything else fighting for your attention. Set the automated transfer so leaving it broken requires a phone call to your bank, not one tap on an app. Tell one other person about your nightly question, because habits witnessed by someone else survive tired Tuesdays that private habits do not. Most videos that talk about saving more money skip straight past this part. This is the part that actually decides whether anything you just learned changes your life or becomes one more idea you agreed with for 2 weeks and then forgot. The same friction trick that helped with the first hour works again here, in both directions at once. Make the habit slightly easier to start than the thing competing with it, and make quitting slightly harder than continuing. Leave the sticky note where you cannot avoid seeing it. Delete the shopping app that tempts you on stressful nights, so buying something requires re-downloading it first, giving your tired brain just enough of a pause to catch itself. None of these tricks rely on you feeling strong. They rely on the environment doing part of the work for you, on exactly the nights you have the least strength to spare. Robert, the contractor from earlier, hit his own tired Tuesday in week 3. He told me later the only reason he did not quit that night was that his wife had started asking him every evening at dinner what his one sentence from the night before had been. That single outside question, asked by one other person, carried him through the exact stretch where his own motivation had already run out. Pull all 3 pillars together, and the thesis is short enough to fit in one sentence. Your evenings, not your income, are the real engine of your financial future. Controlling the first hour decides where your attention goes. Automating your savings decides where your money goes before you can talk yourself out of it. The nightly question decides whether you actually learn from what happened instead of repeating it forever without noticing. None of this is really about money in the end. It is about the kind of life those boring, repeated evenings eventually buy you. The freedom to take a lower-paying job you actually enjoy because your savings can carry you. The dignity of never having to explain a missed payment to someone you love. The quiet peace of knowing your future is being built on purpose, 10 minutes and one transfer and one sentence at a time, instead of being left to whatever is easiest in a tired moment. If you feel behind right now, that feeling is not evidence that it is too late. It is only evidence that your evenings have not been pointed anywhere on purpose yet. Janet did not start at 45. She started at 31 with nothing but 10 minutes and a sticky note, the exact same starting point available to you tonight. Robert did not start with savings. He started with 20 years of nothing to show for his work, and 6 years later had built more than most people manage in twice that time. Behind is a place you start from, not a place you are sentenced to stay. Picture the version of you 10 years from this exact evening, having done nothing but these 3 boring things, night after night, without ever needing to feel motivated about any of it. That version of you is not flashy. He or she did not get there through one brilliant decision. They got there the same way Janet did, the same way Robert did, the same way Carla and Theo and Walter did, by treating ordinary evenings as the most valuable hours they had instead of the hours they could afford to waste. Replace the word money with the word life in everything you just heard, and the lesson does not change at all. Build your evenings on purpose, and you are not just building wealth. You are building a life with options in it instead of a life with excuses in it. That is the whole difference, and it starts tonight, not on some better day that keeps getting pushed back another week. You spent the next 20 minutes of your life here, and that matters more than you probably think it does. The next video picks up exactly where this one ends, looking at the one number most people get completely wrong when they think about retirement, and why fixing that number matters more than almost anything else in this list. Hit subscribe, not as a favor, but because this is not entertainment. This is a discipline, and disciplines are easier to keep when they are not kept alone. Tonight is the night it starts.